In the 1960s, an important scientific experiment began. There's a small cluster of islands, 563 miles straight off the western coast of Ecuador. One of the smaller islands, in the southeastern corner of this island cluster, is called Española Island. On this small, oval-shaped piece of forested land, there was a population of Chelonoidus hudensis, also known as giant tortoises. These giant tortoises had thrived on Española Island for quite a while, but eventually the population started to dwindle. Scientists who were studying the island and its biodiversity were concerned, as this trend of decreasing population was pretty bleak. Many tortoises died when they were young, but some of them, like a male giant tortoise named Diego, were shipped to California, where he lived in the San Diego Zoo. Now, when the experiment began in the middle of the 20th century, there were very few giant tortoises left. By the end of the 1960s, there were only 2 males and 12 females left on the island. So you can understand the motive when the purpose of the scientific experiment was to gather fertile male tortoises and breed them with healthy females, so that the baby turtles can be protected and the population can grow. Now, this one male tortoise, this individual named Diego, was one of 14 male tortoises gathered from around the Galapagos Islands and around the world, and they were all brought to Santa Cruz Island off the coast of Ecuador, where they were all placed in the breeding program. This particular breeding program was considered a success because they were able to raise lots of healthy offspring, which massively boosted the population numbers and potentially created a stable and healthy gene pool. Since it began in the middle of the 20th century, the program has produced more than 2,000 giant tortoises. According to a recent news release, the majority credit for the newborn tortoises goes to Diego. This one tortoise had a remarkable sex drive. According to estimates from scientists from the Galapagos National Park Service, Diego has fathered over 800 offspring since the 1960s. So the big news that I want to bring you today is that this program has retired most of its tortoise studs, and many of them are being sent back to their homes. As Diego was originally from Española Island, that's where he returned. Now, Diego is about 100 years old, and the Park Service said that he was taken from his island about 80 years ago. So he only spent the first 20 years of his life in that natural environment. Diego would go and live in the San Diego Zoo, but when this project began in the 1960s, he was recruited from the zoo and brought to Santa Cruz Island, where he spent the next few decades of his life being given reproductive access to female after female, where he almost single-handedly saved his species in the process. Now that the experiment is over and Diego is being returned to his home island, he's joining a population of giant tortoises that numbers over 1,800. Personnel at the Galapagos National Park Service estimate that over 40% of this population are direct descendants of Diego. The parks director, George Carrion, was talking about Diego in an interview, and he said, quote, "He's contributed a large percentage to the lineage that we are returning to Española. There's a feeling of happiness to have the possibility of returning that tortoise to his natural state." Unquote. Alright, so there you go. This is a happy little story about a horny tortoise whose insatiable sex drive happened to be just the right thing at the right place at the right time to save his population from near extinction.